So this week we're going to tackle a 16-mark crime and punishment question, which comes up on paper 1, the first paper that you're going to do. And you're going to have a practice this Thursday, or depending on when you class, Thursday or Friday. So you need to have a little think about what goes into a 16 or really 20-mark question, because you get marks for spelling, punctuation and grammar. So you should know this by now, but of course history is an argument, not a story. So you start in your introduction by laying out your argument. You should try to choose 3 paragraph subtopics to talk about. If you can't think of 3, but you're sure you've got 2 good ones, just go with 2. It's better to spend time on something you're more sure about than to try to guess at something you're not sure about. You must make sure you explain using phrases like therefore, this meant that, as a result of this. You absolutely need to focus on the question, one of the biggest mistakes students make. And a way to guard against that is to pick some of the words from the question, the key words, and use them often. Write a detailed, explained conclusion, justified with a key piece of evidence. And this particular video should help you to have some impressive knowledge. So the 16-mark questions will often try to give you something to think about, something a bit tricky. And you might get a question like this one, which asks you about the changing definition of crime. So what that means is the definition of what is a crime has changed. So you know, like you have the definition of a word. Like if you look in the dictionary for ball, it might say something like round thing that you can throw or kick. Well, if the definition of a ball had changed, you'd think the ball itself might have changed. Like, what does it mean to be a ball? Well, the definition of crime changed because what was deemed a crime had changed. So to give you an example, a practical example, if you went back to 1920 and said the most horrible, racist, discriminatory thing to somebody who was a different race to you, nothing would happen to you because it wasn't a crime. But the definition of what has become a crime has changed so that now it is absolutely against the law to do something like that. So we've got to explore for this question, what is it that has caused the definition of crimes to change? One of the things that I would certainly talk about, because it's mentioned in the question, is obviously how technological advancements has changed the definition of crime. So, computers are now a means by which criminals can take money from people and other things besides. The first act I can find, and you've come here for extra information, I'd hope, is the Computer Misuse Act of 1990, where it became illegal to do certain things on a computer, which before it wasn't illegal to do. It is the development and advancement in technology which meant that criminals were able to take advantage of computers, and therefore the government had to change the definition of crime. Data theft is something that is also done with cybercrime, as well as money theft. The other obvious example, aside from computer crime, is things to do with the car. You couldn't have done drink driving before the car was invented in the earlier 1800s or in the 1700s. The crime of drunk driving could only happen because of this change in technology. And then technological advancements, as cars became more widespread, became faster, it became more dangerous. Same with a mobile phone and using a phone whilst driving. Something that couldn't have possibly have been illegal in 1930, because you couldn't have had your phone in the car. But this advancement in technology has meant that is now a changed definition of a crime. It's always good to try to go across the whole period, though. Of course, a lot of these technological advancements are in the last 100 or so years. So you could use the example of railway robbery, which is a crime again. Sometimes criminals used to hold up whole trains that were full of valuable goods. Couldn't have happened, and that being a crime, there's all sorts of railway related crimes like railway ticket scams and that sort of thing. They couldn't have happened without the development of the train. So technology would be one of the paragraphs I would tackle. My second paragraph would be all about changing attitudes. Now, it's all about what has become acceptable and unacceptable. As I talked about at the start, racism is something that's changed in a criminal definition. So in 1964, you could legally discriminate against somebody for their race and be racist towards them. But with the 1965 Race Relations Act, it starts to become illegal to treat people of a different skin colour in particular ways. The same with gender. In 1969, it was perfectly legal to pay a woman less than a man for doing the exact same job. But in 1970, the Equal Pay Act was passed. It didn't immediately become into law. They had to give businesses time to adjust. But by 1975 and thereafter, it became illegal to do that. Witchcraft. Well, that's something that really does fit into the question, because if you go back to 1700, it was against the law to be a witch, which we know now is absolutely crazy because people weren't witches. By 1735, attitudes had changed so much because there'd been a scientific revolution and people were looking for scientific ideas for things, so that actually the Witchcraft Act of 1735 not only sort of made it so that people would not be convicted of being witches, it made it illegal to accuse people of being witches. So you go from 1 year where you could be tried under the law for being a witch, to the next year the law swapped and said accusing people of witchcraft is ridiculous, that in itself is against the law. So it's a complete turnabout. Why? Well, it's absolutely because attitudes have changed, because science has taken over. And then another thing is drugs. In 1919, you could get off your mind on drugs and sell as much as you like. But the government stepped in, and the first drug act I can find is the Dangerous Drugs Act of 1920. It didn't focus on all the drugs which are now illegal. It focused on specifically opium and cocaine, which were seen to be particularly harmful drugs. Opium's a bit like heroin is now. It's an absolutely horrendous drug that can cause terrible damage. So there you go. You've got attitudes, and lots of different examples of how attitudes have meant that the definition of crime has changed, so that from 1 week to the next, 1 year to the next, something wasn't a crime that then became a crime. Or in the case of witchcraft, something was a crime that was not then a crime thereafter. And that's it. I'm not going to attempt a third paragraph because I can't think of one that would be as good as the other two. I even drafted in Mr. West this morning to see if he could, and both the two of us, two of the greatest minds in the history of the world, of course, couldn't come up with a third paragraph that was any good. So I'm sticking with two, and you can do that as well in your exam. Always better rather than grasping around. Now, next week, there won't be one of these videos. There'll be something slightly different, well, quite different in fact, because of course you have your first exam next week. So on the night before the exam, I will be broadcasting live on Teams. So if you check the new history team, you can see it in the video there what it's called. Make sure you're in the team. Make sure you accept the invitation to be there live. I can't go through everything during that session. It'd be impossible. If I could do it all in the time given, I would have done that instead of teaching you for all those hours. But I will go through some things which I think are more likely to come up the next day, and I'll answer any of your questions, as well as perhaps go through exactly how to tackle the different question styles. And that'll be the case for the night before all of the papers, barring any particular mishaps. So I hope to see you there. You can log on for as long or as short as you like, or just ignore it altogether. If you can't make it, I will try to make sure I can record it so you can catch it afterwards or in the morning. Okay, I hope you found this useful. Thank you and goodbye.